Hey everybody, welcome to today's live stream, and we're gonna focus on a topic that we didn't have really a lot of time to cover this week amidst all of the protests happening in China, but it's very important because this is basically how China does information warfare, especially on Western social media like Twitter and Facebook, which they do a lot of the most prominent info wars on. So let's go into it. There was reports a few days ago, about 3-4 days ago, when China was having the massive amount of protest, and it was basically about how Chinese bots are flooding Twitter with these pornographic accounts, often fake, of course, but they impersonate somebody that looks like a real person, and people fall for it. But the most important part about this is the fact that they're actually able to distract people amidst all the information going on, especially on Twitter. So during the protest, we were getting a lot of videos, which I've shown over the past few days, and some of them are very important. But if you go on Twitter right now, and if you search a Chinese character of a city in China, for example, like Shanghai or Beijing, the chance of you finding pornographic content, spammed accounts, 90% of it versus real content, right? So the goal, of course, is to minimize the exposure of those videos of people protesting in Beijing and Shanghai. And they've been so far very successful. It even garnered attentions of Western reporting. So let's just briefly go over this. It says, as a series of nationwide anti-COVID lockdown protests rode China this week, Twitter users are finding it difficult to search for information on the social media platform due to an explosion in pornographic spam. Well, as protesters were taking to the streets in Beijing and Shanghai to decry the COVID restrictions and rolling lockdowns, a digital bot army roared into gear on Twitter with a phalanx of long-dormant Chinese language accounts suddenly tweeting a bunch of stuff like links to escort services in China and other adult content. Of course, we're not going to show them here, but I can show you some examples as to how exactly China conducts it and why they do it. Okay, first of all, we have to briefly understand the context of this. When the Chinese Communist Party controls information, what they're really seeking to accomplish is to control the discourse and the subsequent discussions around a particular subject, be it the origin of COVID or how China is doing on the world stage, or how peaceful and beautiful China is. Any of these subtopics of a particular set of discussions has to be mainly controlled by China or pro-China voices at all times, and that's the goal, right? So when you're talking about China, you have to emphasize on why they need to control this thing called discourse power. In Chinese, it's called 话语权, which is the ability to speak in a dominant way, or you can interpret it as the way to control the directions of any dialogue, right? So what they want you to understand is anytime you want a source of China, you want to go to the Chinese state source, not some BBC reporter or the New York Times. Anytime you want to talk about how good China is, you want to be hearing voices from China or people who claim them as the official sources of some sort. Or when you're talking about, say, the origin of COVID, you don't want people to say that COVID came from Wuhan, came from a laboratory in Wuhan. You want people to think that COVID came actually from a US military lab, and it's all the US's fault, right? These are called dialogue and discourse power. Now, of course, given the severe lockdowns for the last 3 years, China has really been pushing its limits, and people are angry in China, so they started protesting this week. And then you have accounts on Twitter, which are, some of them show here. Let's see here. So I'm just going to block out, well, these ones are okay. They don't show any nudity or anything like that. Well, basically, this is the content you're going to see if you search a particular city. As you can see, there's that little hashtag of that particular city, and you will just see these accounts. Like, these people if you don't really use Twitter that much, or maybe you're not too familiar with it, you might believe that this is a beautiful girl showing her body and these kind of things. But in reality, they're all fake, right? And according to Air Moving Device, which is a researcher on this, the amount of Twitter spam versus the time, well, let me just click into this link so we can see here. Take a look at this picture. So this is when you search the word Beijing here. What you get instead of content like videos about the protest, what you end up getting are these, basically they're like escort advertisements and random stuff, right? From these accounts that you have no idea what they do. And then you have the number of tweets over spam accounts through the days that the protest started, okay? So number of tweets per hour at the bottom here is 0 and then goes to 120 tweets per hour, okay? See how on the 11th, 28th, so that's November 28th, how many accounts were tweeting 120 tweets per hour, meaning that these accounts here, up here on the top, were doing the most of the spam work, whereas the number of accounts that actually started tweeting out, say in the 300 range down here on this day, basically throughout the entire week, right? And then it kind of got shorter over time. So it's a huge significance in terms of data when you have these graphs to show that how much China is really getting to basically wash them over. And there's some pictures here. I don't know if it's safe to show, but basically, so the protest, like Twitter, but also includes things like Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. They're not available in China, right? We all know that. China has their own set of social media, which are heavily censored. But they're able to push these content to us here in the West. And the goal, of course, is to stop us from seeing the real information, even on social media where they can't control, technically, right? They can control all of the Chinese social media, but on Chinese social media, you would never actually find any pornographic material because that is against the law in China. Porn is, I believe, is heavily regulated or it's not even allowed, and you won't be able to find it on Chinese search engines either. And this is all a part of the information warfare, really, to send the worst of the worst to us here in the West. And one of the good examples of this is actually TikTok. Now, on TikTok, the Chinese state media has two versions, right? One of them is called Douyin, which is for the domestic audience in China. And there's the TikTok, which is our version, the rest of the world, which we consume, right? The worst thing that TikTok does is they actually interfere in our politics and elections without people really realizing it. I remember there was a Wall Street Journal investigation last year that said when they used their own versions of the bot accounts to browse TikTok, eventually some of the accounts, which were all underage, by the way, or set to different age standards, they started seeing drug use and pornographic suggestive content on TikTok as the algorithm starts rolling in. Now, let's just give a read here. It says, TikTok accounts run by the propaganda arm of the Chinese government have accumulated millions of followers and tens of millions of views, many of them on videos editorializing about U.S. policies without clear disclosure that they were posted by a foreign government. Quote, these accounts are managed by Media Links TV, a registered foreign agent and Washington, D.C.-based outpost of the main Chinese Communist Party television news outlet, China Central Television, or CCTV, which is the primary state media television. And then the largest of them are, quote, at Pandora Rama, which features cute videos about Chinese culture, at the Optimist, which posts about sustainability, and at News Talks, which features coverage of U.S. national and international news. In the run-up of the 2022 elections, the at News Talks account criticized some candidates, mostly Republicans, and favored others, mostly Democrats. A video from July began with the caption, quote, Cruz, Abbott don't care about us. And it's a video from October caption, quote, Rubio has done absolutely nothing. So here are some of the examples that they give it. Okay, so these accounts have a lot of following, a lot of attentions, and if you have the right push from the algorithm on TikTok, you can actually get through political messages where otherwise you wouldn't be able to, right? There's no way that a Chinese social media would even allow a Western politician to say anything, let alone promote them, or I guess to bash them in some ways, depending on which party. But the quote here says, the TikTok accounts run by Media Links do provide some information about the entity behind them. Profile bios for the account says, quote, material distributed by Media Links TV LLC on behalf of CCTV. More info at DOJ, DC, but the vast majority of the people viewing Media Links videos never see this language. According to data posted on LinkedIn by a Media Links employee, News Talks garnered 8.3 million video views between May 8th and July 6th, 2022, but only 57,600 profile views during the same 60-day periods. So 8.3 million views of kids likely aged, I would say the user age of TikTok is somewhere in the 12 to 30 likely the most popular age group for TikTok users, they viewed this video about political messages made by the Chinese government 8.3 million times, but only between, by the way, this is from May 8th. Sorry, it's kind of cold in here. My nose is dripping. From May 8th and July 6th, right? So within about a month period, or 2 months, sorry. They viewed the videos 8.3 million times, but only less than 60,000 clicks on the actual profile. So people didn't really care relatively where this video came from. They just saw the message and they watched it, right? And the way TikTok works is really on the idea of watching videos, how many seconds you spend on the video, what type of clicks and you know, which section or which hashtag you're using for that particular video. So these type of things, they generate more content based on the particular video. So if you stayed for 10 seconds on this video, say bashing Rubio, then the next video, the chance of that being pushed by TikTok will be something along the lines of also, say, bashing Rubio or other politicians. And this can apply to things like the protest in Hong Kong in 2019, or the Uyghur concentration camp content, or even just the beauty of China, right? All of these, they're about creating discourse power for the younger generation. And that's one of the reasons why TikTok is so dangerous to young people today. It is precisely because a foreign government has the ability to essentially manage and control what your kids and young adults are seeing today on a popular social media. But Twitter, let's go back to Twitter because Twitter is another beast to tackle here, okay? I want to give you some examples because I think this is pretty interesting. So I'll show you this. So these are my Twitter DMs, right? If you scroll through them, none of these are actually real people. In fact, I pulled some of them out. I already did a pre-check so that there's no bad content on there for us to see. But basically, just take a look how many people have tried to message me over time, just asking random questions, right? And they do this, they actually target people who have some special topics that they discuss on Twitter. So for example, if you talk about China a lot, which I do, the chance of them targeting you is pretty high, okay? So first one here is Liu Hui, which says, of course, this is a bot account, so Twitter has cautioned us that the account is temporarily restricted. But let's just go in here. Okay, it says Liu Hui is a computer programming director, joined on February 2019, okay? Her last post is pictures of herself. Supposedly, this is the lady we're talking about here, okay? This is the girl. We don't know if she's a real person or not, but all she does is she posts pictures of supposedly her on this, right? And that's pretty much, you know, her whole thing. And the first tweet is, today is the day we remember our brothers and sisters who died in 1994 during the Tutsi genocide, as we remember we strong building, blah, 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 blah. I'm a proud Rwandan, okay? Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know if I'm a racist or not, but she does not look anything like she's from Rwanda, okay? I can tell you that much. But clearly she is a very outgoing lady, and she's about to do some good, right? Okay. Now, this is one of the bot account. The second one here is, her name is Ran Wan, okay? This one. If you go to this, it says shopping malls are like battlefields, and learning is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will retreat. She joined December 2019, okay? And she does a lot of retweeting of different things, like LinkedIn tweets, but that's it. I think there's show more, but I don't know if there's, okay, but that's pretty, okay, that's it. So that's that one. Then there's Cherry, who apparently follows me, and she follows 2,000 other people, has 181 followers, and she retweets some of the important stuff there. She does not post anything pornographic, but she's just kind of here, okay? Then there's Alice Kong with a rainbow flag in there. She has a Chinese bio. It looks like a very professional lady that probably works at Silicon Valley or something. I'm not sure. But she, you know, she reads, she does all these things, she talks about tech, and then she has all these great quotes. The entire profile looks pretty good, right? So I don't know if she's a real person or not, but from the looks of it, she joined September 22nd, and she's from California, okay? And then the last one. This one is Ah Yue. She is now living in New York, likes to watch politics, finance, technology, and medicine, okay? And then she posts herself, right? Pictures. Beautiful lady, that's it. Okay, And then Lita, which says her profile is protected. Okay. And then also we have Anne Wang Yue, who also apparently follows me, but she also joined November 2022. So these are not old accounts. They're literally fresh accounts that people just joined. Okay. So let's continue. Oh, this one. Let me just refresh the page. Let's just continue with this one here, because this is actually the main article I want to talk about, but is very long. So I'm going to go to the top here, and then we just dissect the sections here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the investigation from Disinfo Lab says the fake wall of China, deception through hired social media mercenaries, part 1. Okay. During the entirety of the protest, we were seeing a lot of these bombardments of just social media post after social media post of fake people on Twitter. Why is it so hard to scroll? Oh my God. Okay, maybe I will have to use Safari for this. Let's see. Sorry, let me just do this real quick. Safari, fake wall of China. Okay, let's do this. Okay, and let me just share that with you here. Mac OS, Safari, where are you? Okay. All right, so this is our post today. Okay. So let's go over it. It says, introduction, widespread protests against the Chinese Communist Party are going on across various major cities in China. And for the past few months, countries prolonged and strict lockdown rules under, basically it was talking about how this whole event started, right? There was an apartment fire in Urumqi in Xinjiang, and then it led to the death of 44 plus people, unlike the state officials reported. Now, in the wake of such developments, a network of accounts on social media was found to be lurking to suppress the sequence of events. Chinese language accounts in large numbers were found to be covering up the anti-establishment protests in China through a massive scale of spamming operations. Institutions and journalists have now started identifying such spam networks as that operate to avert the leakage of anti-China information beyond the borders. It's not a new phenomenon. However, these spam networks work for China, and they've been existing for years and been under our observation. Okay, so the spams are a part of the Chinese operation on social media, primarily created for polishing China's global image and to kind of disguise the human rights violations, among other things. And it usually continues to spam among the, I guess, whenever there's a lot of, let's just say, embarrassing moments for China. And that's when these spams become more popularized. Okay, so first, let's do the case study 1. So case study 1 is the anti-CCP zero COVID policy protest. As early as March, April of 2020, when the deadly virus was taking a stride and suspicions about China had begun, ops deployed pro-Chinese propaganda to manipulate its global image. The narrative was simple: to tout China as a global leader and laud its ability to surpass the Western superpowers in handling the pandemic. Right? We're talking about this, the discourse power. To control discourse power, you have to constantly push the narrative, right? And to the Chinese Communist Party, information warfare is everything. But as far as Twitter goes, it's pretty simple, actually. They just post a lot of content that are pro-China. Okay. So this was the protest during 2022, actually this week. And we can see that the protest emerging from the tragedy in Xinjiang subsequently swept through the streets in China, seeking the resignation of Xi Jinping and the party. And then there's media control in China. So in 2022, China entered its 3rd year. And inside the Chinese firewall of censorship, you cannot find information about the protest. In fact, I would say that to estimate the percentage of Chinese people who don't know that there were protests in China, I would say in the high 90s. Okay, if you aren't somebody who was in the city, if you aren't someone, you're not somebody who goes around and looks for this type of information, it's very hard for you to find on Chinese social media, especially when the state media wasn't even reporting any of this entire week, right? So Media control. China has the most restrictive liberty for media and has complete control of the censorship of the news and information outflow through the state-affiliated media. The state media regularly spreads the pro-CCP narrative, but was nowhere in the picture in covering the news about the protest. Exactly, right? What we just said. They were just doing things like pretending like this whole thing wasn't happening in China. But on Chinese social media, you would not find things like this. You wouldn't find, this Brett Red talking about the Communist Party, but you would find them if you went to their website, like CGTN, like the Global Times, XinhuaNet, and also CCTV English. They have a huge propaganda arm for the overseas audience, especially the English-speaking language audience, but Spanish, French, Italian, in the Asian languages as well. On the other hand, here it says, there were clampdowns on foreign journalists who were reporting. So Ed Lawrence from the BBC was arrested, beaten, and then released after he was reporting on the ground in Shanghai. Now, how does this fit into the spam network, right? The spam network is the whole operation carried out by the set of accounts, which can be large in numbers, but is often defined as a spam network. The core objective of a spam network is to flood social media platforms with its content to take over a large chunk of cyberspace and further achieve an objective. This would enable them to appear in anyone's search results or on their timeline, successfully cater to them with their spam content flooding. Meaning that if you try to go look for something like protest in Shanghai, the chance of you finding an escort advertisement is higher now because of the spam than it is to find the actual content. Now, Elon Musk is supposedly removing a lot of Twitter bot accounts as we speak, so we could be seeing a decrease, but likely this is something that's going to continue to go on, and they need a really good defensive measure from Twitter to be able to solve this. But let's continue. Okay, so here, take a look at this picture. These are all different accounts, but posting very similar things, right? The same picture, the girl, and then same picture here of her body, and then these different advertisements. It seems further analysis says, on further analysis, it was found that most of these accounts were newly created, like the ones we just showed you. They were from November, December of, say, 2019 at the latest, or earliest, and then something like November this year at the latest. And a lot of these below the followers count of below 10. And then so what they did was they used Beijing as the only keyword to analyze the tweet done on November 26th to 27th, which were the days of the protest. And they found that the tweets were in large numbers, approximately, I think that is, what is that? Is that 1 million? No, it's 180,000 tweets by 46,000 unique accounts. And upon analyzing these accounts that tweeted using Beijing keyword, we found that 9,865 accounts were created since May 2020. Most numbers of accounts, i.e. 1,675 accounts, were created in May 2020, followed by here 1,000 created in June 2022, 1,336 created July, 1,382 created August, blah, blah, blah. You get the picture, right? But then the creation timeline here, as you can see, right, it goes, I don't know how good are the numbers here, but at the bottom here, it says 2020 at the end here. So here it says 2020. Okay, that is a huge jump here. So meaning that because of the event that we saw in November, which is last month, but really this week, the number of creations of the accounts essentially hugely high, exponentially jumped high, right? And then the following example shows the accounts that were created in 2022 and their screen names are in Chinese. Furthermore, all these accounts have seemingly malicious links in their bios. Okay, they're all basically these porn bot accounts, and they all post very similar contents like these. Either it's some girl or some something advertising escort services in China, which I don't understand, because if you consider you're catering to a Western audience, right? It seems like their only mission is to just flood the Twitter timeline with bad information. I don't think they expect anybody to believe them, right? The ones that I showed you were, I think, more disguised as regular accounts, and they actually go and message you on Twitter, and that's when it gets kind of dangerous, because maybe you don't know. Maybe you thought an attractive Asian woman is talking to me, so I better answer her, something like that. Not so sure. Okay, and then rate of attrition. The thing is, spamming social network here as seen by the investigation, nature of bots and spam, it's not easy to continue operating smoothly. For example, a large number of the accounts of the spam network keeps getting suspended by Twitter. However, these accounts continue to exist and operate in bulk. Extracting the data of tweets over 2 days led us to identify such a huge spam network. The fact that the activities of these spam accounts networks multiplied by 1,000 times to indicate that they can generate far more account than Twitter can suspend. That's really the game of numbers, right? We all know that spam accounts are just, they're not for long-term things. They're really to just get the temporary effect and then they leave. Now, the second case study is the beautiful China case study. And this one is really about highlighting how China is very beautiful. All of the human rights violations you're talking about has nothing to do with us. And in fact, we think you're just trying to taint China's image. Now, in this part, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I'll show you some pictures here. These are pictures that show basically, the real China. You have the quarantine camps, you have tweets criticizing China, right? But then when this person tweeted out this article criticizing China, they get a bunch of bots spamming like pre-written rebuttals almost, or some of them just basically bash you, right? They often say something like, I'm a Chinese person, have you even been to China? You don't know anything about China, our economy is so great, whatever. And a lot of times it doesn't even make sense because, the post is in English, they reply in Chinese, etc. And then there's the ones where they really highlight the beauty of China. China's beautiful. I've been to a few places. It's a great landscape, beautiful sceneries, mountains, rivers, etc. But when you can even propagandize that part, right? You don't see Tourism America or Tourism Canada being like, there was a protest, a BLM protest, and they start saying, oh, have you been to the U.S., Lake Tahoe or California, so nice, Yosemite Park, right? It's really weird, but they do that. And they also highlight, how politicians are great, how their astronauts are going to the moon, etc. Or like pictures, beautiful pictures, or cute animals, pandas, all of these things, right? They use that to distract or to even disguise themselves. And then there's also the political post, which are these. And they basically talk about, China when Xi Jinping had this meeting with these people, he said these words, blah, 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 the future of China, the rejuvenation of humanity, all of whatever he says, right? They're being constantly reported as well. And then there's also the model spam network. This one is quite similar to the ones that I showed you. They basically take some model from China, take their photos with portraits, and they post it on here, and then they make it seem like they're the real authentic owner of these accounts, right? So same picture again, 2 different accounts. Most of them, they all kind of look the same, to be honest. And I'm speaking as a Chinese person, right? I don't know how, that makes me wonder if these are AI generated content as well, right? Or you have the ones where I showed you, you had a very beautiful but talented girl from China, somebody who does maybe finance, tech, accounting, doctors, lawyers. They make it seem like they're actually working, in California or in New York or Boston or wherever, right? They really find a lot of these. I don't know where they come from, but here's an interesting one. And while analyzing the followers of these accounts, we found that the list was replete with 100% follow back and similar model accounts exhibiting the same behavioral pattern. So all of the accounts that we saw had like something like 180 followers following 2,000 people, for example. They're kind of like follow for follow, right? You follow me, I follow you. So they're really like an algorithm that kind of follows each other, like all of the bot accounts, to generate, I guess, popularities. Then you have something called DP borrowing network. So as we mentioned, the model accounts form part of this network and operate with an assumed identity. And the key part of this practice is either picture theft or using pictures of prominent models or actors as the display pictures by these spam network accounts. While analyzing the followers list of these model accounts, we observed several accounts following the same practice. From these, we identified 7 such accounts. One of them is the case of Twitter account @WangZaiBBB, which claims to be a Chinese citizen. However, the display picture used by this account is of a Korean actress, Shin Ye-eun. Her picture was taken by this spam network account from one of the fan pages of the actor. Okay, so they don't really care, it seems. And then the second case of theft is observed in a 100% follow back account, Linlin8789688. This account has acquired the image of a Weibo user as depicted in the graph below. Okay, so they obviously steal from other people. Here, it seems they also follow random girls from Weibo, which highlights that little box here, or they're like actresses, adult actresses, most cases. And then last but not least is the dissociated communications. It seems like this common behavior observed in another set of accounts was that they were essentially carrying out the task of quoting, tweeting, and retweeting, which is actually, I think, the case with the accounts I showed you. They just retweet a bunch of random stuff, right? They basically amplify tweets that are pro-China in most cases. And the specimen of such bot account is at Jando09042397. Scrolling through this account, it was evident that, barring Facebook links, this account profusely shares China-affiliated media posts, which is pretty interesting. Like these ones here in the example, they all share the same thing. Okay, the rest of it is, I think, more graphs, which is kind of boring. But to summarize all of this, right? Every time there is a disinformation campaign from China, it's really about hiding something, including the recent death of Zhang Zemin we saw yesterday, which is basically to hide something, right? But let me show you the reality as we conclude here of what is really going on in China, is this. So let me quickly get you up to date here. This one, okay. Okay, take a look at this. These are people being dragged away from their homes to COVID camps. This story you would never find in China. You would never find with these bot accounts posting them, but they're the reality of Chinese people today, right? The Chinese Communist Party is very good at hiding whatever they're doing to the Chinese people. They're really good at trying to get the West to stop thinking and looking and talking about whatever is going on in China. At the same time, they also try to disguise their intention with the United States. We all know what happened when China was doing the trade war. They weren't fulfilling their part of the trade agreement. They were stealing our technology. They're doing everything they can to overpower our ability to thrive. And they're trying to change our way of life. And all of this is built on the foundation of the work that they're doing to their own people, which is basically brutal crackdown on dissidents and then doing everything they can to silence people, both here and abroad, right? And then there's another video I thought was quite shocking, actually. So there was a protest in China a few days ago. This was caught on camera. And this father is being questioned by 4 cops on where he was on the day of the protest, and then they started essentially beating him up in front of his kids. So I'm not going to show the whole video because then that might strike YouTube, but but basically, yeah, like this is, China is doing everything they can to disguise whatever they don't want to tell us. But in reality, what we should do is, well, you and I probably understand that, China is not really our friend. Sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor out. There we go. Okay. So they're not really our friends, but what it is, I think, is we have to understand and recognize that there's a huge number of people who do fall for this type of stuff. I think it's better if we can raise awareness as to what they're doing. So get them to watch this video and subscribe to our channel, share our video, and share them with your family. Especially talk to if you have kids or if you have grandkids, talk to them about the danger of TikTok. Because while they're trying to fool us with these low quality spam accounts, what they're also doing is they're getting your kids to getting them brainwashed on content that are clearly messed up, right? Whether we're talking things like pornographic or drug use, or we're talking about things like how bad the US society is. It creates an image that China is better than the US. So think about what happens when they grow up, right? Are we going to rely on the new generation to engage with China when they already have in their mind this image of China, which is clearly untrue? But they don't know that, right? And they're not getting the sources of information like when you watch videos that you would get. So it's a really big danger, but also, they're taking our data. They're using that data to further study how how they can control our behavior. So everything has to do with warfare, and China is great at using information warfare. So I think it's time for us to defend ourselves. We can't rely on the government to do this for us, right? You can do things like delete TikTok. You can understand why they're doing such things. But at the end of the day, I think it's about each individual and how they understand the evil of the Chinese Communist Party and why they want to do this, right? And if you see what's happening in China for the last 3 years, this zero COVID, it's really scary. And it can actually happen to us if China takes over, and they do want to take over. Anyways, that's it for today's State of Politics live stream. Thank you so much for watching both YouTube and Ganjin World. And make sure to subscribe to our channel, turn on your notification bell. We have new content and coverage of China, US, everything else every single day. So hope you stay with us. And also comment below what you think about the content we covered today. And like this video as well. I'm David Zhang. Thanks so much for watching today's live State of Politics. See you next time.